In this video, I'm going to go over how to make a professional looking dashboard without the need of using any complex formulas or programming or coding. And so I've got a sample database that you can download if you want to follow along. And so what I'm going to do is use this data set to create some pivot tables and then link them together in one dynamically updating dashboard. And so I've already set up a named range for my data set. So the first thing I'm going to do is make two tabs. One for the data and the pivot tables, and the other one I'm just going to call it the dashboard. Okay. And so on the data tab, I'm going to start by creating a pivot table. And my named range is dataset 1. And the first thing I'm going to do is get all the sales by month, and so just plopping in the dates on the rows and then the sales dollars in the value section of the pivot table. Now Excel 2016 had automatically grouped my dates into months, and you can change how it's grouped. If you right click on the row labels and select group, it gives you an option so you can see days and months are selected. I could actually uncheck days because I just want to see the months. So, but if you had multiple years you want to compare against, you can click off years as well. I'm just going to leave it at months and hit OK. And then the sales numbers, I'm just going to change the formatting on this. The value field settings, number format, and accounting, just so that way it looks a little better when looking at the numbers and easy to see thousands and hundreds. And so now that I've set up my pivot table, the next thing I'm going to do is turn it into a chart. So there's a pivot chart button here. I'm going to click on that, and I'm just going to leave it with the clustered column by default. Now, the one thing I don't like about pivot charts is they have these ugly gray buttons here. And so if I go to the Analyze tab, I can unclick the field buttons and that disappears. And because these are totals, I don't need a legend. And what I'm also going to do is fix the gap on the data, format the data series. I'm going to change the gap width here. Now you can't see it, but I'm going to change it to 50%, just so it's a little fatter. And add a label for total sales, bold it, and for the border, I'm just going to get rid of the outline. And so now, got my first chart set up, and I'm going to copy this over, cut and paste it to my dashboard. So I've got it on there. And what I'm also going to do on this tab is I'm going to get rid of the grid lines. Okay. And now that I've got that set up, that's my first pivot table. What I'm going to do is now make another pivot table based on the same data set. And in this case, I'm going to look at sales by product. So I'm going to drop in sales dollars again. I'm going to put product in the row section. And again, I'm going to change the formatting. So it's an accounting formatting. And now again, I can convert this into a pivot chart again. And this time I'm going to go with a 3D pie chart. And again, I'm going to cut and paste this into the dashboard right away. And I'm going to go through the same steps I did before, getting rid of the field buttons, getting rid of the border. And then what I'm also going to do here is I'm going to add data labels. And I'm going to format these data labels so I have the category name as well as the percentage. Obviously you can set it up however you want. I just want to get rid of this legend because it's not really useful when you have this many categories. And now here I'm going to name this sales by product. And I can put this a little bit higher up. There we go. So that one's nicely in there. So now that's pivot table 2. I'm going to do a couple more. So I insert another pivot table. And the great thing about a named range is I don't have to select the range anymore. And so this one I'm going to do sales by store. Data, sales, and now again I'm going to change my field settings. So the number format is accounting again. And ready to convert it again into a pivot chart. and this time I'm going to do a bar chart just so it's a little different than the other ones. Again, cut and paste onto here. And again, go to Analyze, get rid of the buttons. I'm going to change the gaps again. Format data series. I normally set the gap width to 50%. And again, because these are totals, I don't need a legend. And I'm also going to get rid of the border again. And because this is already blue, I'm going to change the color scheme to orange. And let's call this Sales by Store. Okay, so that's good. And now I'm going to do my final pivot table. Go to the side. You want to make sure these pivot tables don't overlap, because then if by chance when you run a filter and it expands it, then it's going to give you an error message. So just be careful about that. If you've got a lot of rows and columns, then you might even want to put them on separate sheets. Data set 1 again, and this time this is going to be my most complex pivot table. It's going to have sales rep and store type. So I have stores here, sales rep in the columns, and then once again total sales. And then again, I'm going to change the value field settings again. And the reason I go through field settings is this changes it even if I refilter it, because you can select the entire column and change it to accounting, but then when you rerun the pivot table, when you refresh it or apply a filter to it, then the formatting is going to revert back to what it was. So I've got my pivot table set up. I'm going to do again insert a chart, and this time I'm going to do a stacked column chart, so that way I can see the different makeup of the stores. Get rid of the buttons again, and I'm going to change the design of it so that the legend is at the bottom. Okay, and again I'm going to do Control X, Control V, and again I'm going to get rid of my border. Okay, and in this case I'm going to add a chart title of the chart. I'll call this Sales by Rep and Store. And with this one set up, this one's the most complicated, so I'm going to try to stretch it out a little bit more so you can see it. And again, I'm going to change the data series again to get rid of the gaps a little bit. Okay, so the pivot tables and pivot charts, they're all set up to go. But right now, they don't really do anything special. These are just regular charts. But what I'm going to do now is add slicers, which really are what sort of make these dashboards. Turns them into dynamic dashboards that will update right away based on your selections. So if I select one of these charts, I'm going to go to Insert, and let's hit Slicer. I'm going to hit Store, Salesperson, Product, and I actually want month in there as well, but grab that in a second. So I've got Store in here, and so when you're editing a slicer, I mean, you can see right here, this is not really practical. You don't want to stretch this all the way down just to make a selection, but under options you can put the number of columns you want. So I'll put 3 columns because these are not really long strings, so it'll fit easily. Same thing for sales rep. I prefer it so it's across the top here. I could even do 4 columns there. Product, same sort of thing. So I'll try to line it up a little bit here. Okay. And then the one thing I was going to add is I forgot, I should have added the, I want to make sure that all these have a date linked to them. There we go. So that way when I update the pivot table, it factors in the date as well. So what I'm going to do is insert another slicer for the date. So I want to make sure they all are updated based on the date selection. Okay. So now all of these slicers are now set up. Obviously you can space it out a little bit more, however you want for the sake of appearances. So I'm just going to make it so that all the charts fit nicely on here. Okay. And stretch this one out a little bit more so I get all the months in there. Options. And now with slicers, if you see options like this that are faded out, that just means you can't make that selection, that you don't have any data that those filters will be able to pick up. So if you're wondering why some of them might be faded out, that's why. So I'm going to pull these over a little bit so there's no overlap. Oops. Okay, so that, stretch this one out just so it's even. Okay, and now so I've got my charts, I've got my slicers. So the beauty of a slicer is, you select it and it'll filter your pivot chart based on those selections. But to make this really dynamic, I'm going to go to report connections, and I'm going to check all the pivot tables on here. And this way it'll be linked to every single one of them. And so that way when I make a selection for store A, now all of my charts change, as opposed to just the one. So that's the really cool thing about linking slicers to your pivot charts and pivot tables, is they can make the changes across the board. So again, I'm going to do the same thing for each one of these slicers. And the key thing that makes this work is I've got the same range set up for all these pivot tables, because if my ranges, like I use dataset 1, my named range, but if that wasn't the case, if I had different sources for these pivot tables, then it wouldn't be able to connect, as dynamically to this. Because otherwise now, when I make a selection, like let's say I wanted to see the sales for stores A, B, and C, so I can hit Control on my keyboard, select B, and select C. And now my chart updates based on those selections. So everything that I see now are sales by product are for stores A, B, and C. If I go by sales rep and store, you can see I only have sales stores A, B, and C, store A, B, and C, right? And so let's say I wanted to see the sales in these 3 stores that were made by, let's say, sales rep A. So now I see all of sales rep A's sales in these 3 stores, year to date. The product mix. And if I wanted to see only a few months, let's say I select April, May, actually I did the opposite here. Hold on a second. If I select April, May, and July, I guess you didn't have any in June, and that's why you see June and September are grayed out there, because there's nothing that fits that criteria. So now you see all of the sales that rep A made in stores A, B, and C for these 3 months. So that's the beauty of setting it up with a dashboard like this and setting all the links up, is the user can drill down however they like and see the different charts based on their selections, and you don't have to go one by one. So that's a quick and easy way to set up a dashboard that you can use in a variety of different ways. I mean, obviously you can select the charts to look however you want, and the different chart types. The key thing is using the same data source, and then just a matter of making pivot tables. And that's why I also put the pivot tables all on one tab as well, just so they're not getting in the way, because you don't want to see pivot tables in the background on the dashboard. And so I hope you found this useful, and thanks for watching.